The subject of hell can be kind of a difficult subject for non-believers, atheists, agnostics, but I actually think it's more of a difficult conversation for those who do believe. For instance, if you're a believer, do you think hell is merely separation from God? Do you believe that God doesn't actually send people to hell? No, no, no. They send themselves. Well, if you do, maybe you can help reconcile a verse in Revelation. Grab your Bibles, Revelation 20, verse 15. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. Notice that it didn't say people jumped in, dove in, or even fell into the lake of fire. No, they were thrown into the lake of fire. If you can clear this up for us, give us a call because the show is starting right now. Welcome, everyone. Today is February 4th, 2024. I am your host, Secular Rarity, and joining me today is a man who will not be throwing you into fire. It's Jim Barrows. What's up, brother? You muted, Jim. Gotta have one every show, right?
Yeah, I got to do it at least once, right? Why are you going to limit me like that? What do you mean I'm not going to throw anybody into a lake of fire?
I mean, I guess if you
Can
want
I yoink
to.
them?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
If I can't eat them, can I yoink them?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. If you pull them into the lake of fire, that feels less aggressive than the throwing, right? I mean,
yeah, and much the same way an alligator kind of yoinks you into the water, right?
Yeah. Nobody has a problem with that. I don't see anybody being upset about that.
And somewhere there's some youngster whose head's exploding at the fact that I'm using words like yeet and yoink.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, seriously. When you were a believer, though, Jim, where did you kind of fall on that spectrum? I mean, was hell a separation from God? Was there even a hell? I mean, like, how did you kind of come across?
I was a Catholic, so so it wasn't just the hell, right? There was also the oh shoot, I'm having a senior moment now.
Purgatory.
Purgatory, yeah. So there's also purgatory. No, but hell was punishment, not separation from God, but active punishment, burning, fire, all not good stuff. And purgatory was more about being separated from God, being able to see God, but not being able to be in his presence type thing. If I remember what I was taught correctly, which may or may not be what the actual Catholic Church teaches, since I don't think the church teaches purgatory anymore. Yeah, they changed stuff around, but purgatory was never doctrine, so that's okay.
Sure, yeah, all supposed to come from an infallible being or whatever, but yeah, fine, just change it willy-nilly. Yeah, I get you. I'm with you.
Yeah, no, we won't. We can get into that if caller really wants to, because the Catholic Church has got to get weird on some things, right? Like, I once tried to figure out exactly when something became doctrine and what was the actual mechanism, right?
Oh my God.
What does the Pope do to do this? And it was like, oh, there isn't one. There's just one that's been around for the last 200 years, but before that, it was much crazier and weirder. Yeah. So there's really
we wanted.
Yeah, no way to really say when the Pope is speaking from the throne of Peter to teach the church, which is the definition of infallibility. So you can ask him the time of day and he can be wrong, and that's okay. But yeah, anyway. Yeah. But it was active punishment, not just separation from God.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if it was just separation from God, who wants to be around a narcissist anyway?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's how the separation thing honestly sounds pretty great. At least based on the way this God character has always been presented to me. I whether or not you think it's this separation or whether you think it's, annihilationism, you get poofed out of existence or whatever. It very much seems to be, like, historically speaking, the learned church fathers and whatnot seem seemed to get the message that it was active punishment and torture. I mean, right? Like this goes like Augustus says stuff about this. Like we got a bunch of people.
But Augustus isn't really an early. I mean, he is an early church father, right? But he's still 1400.
He's still far away. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's not like 200 or 300. Or year zero, right?
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know that we have much. I don't know if we have many writings that early on about hell. That's really interesting. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, and how many did the first 12? What did the first 12 understand?
Yeah,
right. What do they really understand? This kind of goes back to some things that apologists will say, which is, we have it's accurate to the earliest copies, and that's how we know it's true. And it's like, but the earliest copy, even using apologist dates, which are early at 40 years, that's a generation,
right? More than enough time for people to forget things or get things incorrect or add some stuff. I mean, it wasn't very long after Tupac was shot that everybody was talking about hanging out with him at a party that weekend. So
doesn't take long. We can go back to the Challenger disaster and where everybody was and what they were doing. Go back to when the Twin Towers fell. What was everybody doing? And memories fade. One of the reasons why cops keep suspects apart is not because, yes, sometimes suspects will collude and actually try to lie to the police, but sometimes they're not. But the stories will still gel into something that wasn't true, even with the best of intention, folks, because we like telling stories. We know our memories are faulty. And so, how do we know what any of those originals were taught? How do we know we didn't get word for word everything Jesus ever said? That's true. And we got things we know nobody could have known what he said because he was alone in the garden.
Yeah. And known forgeries and all of that and anonymous authorship. And yeah. Well, look, folks, Jim and I, we sure could be wrong about all of this, and us as fallible, non-believers over here, all we're asking is that you help clarify this for us. Very, very simple. We've got open lines right now, 512-991-9242, or you can hit us up on the web, tiny.cc/call-AXP. We have open lines. So if you've got some answers to some of these questions, please let us know, because otherwise Jim and I might be in hell. We might be tortured in hell.
You might be in hell listening to us just blather on.
That's a very good point. That might be what happens. We're not saying for sure, but it is on the table. But before we completely go off the rails, we're 7 minutes in, and I am confident Greg has his hands over his face, sighing very deeply, thinking, why? But I want to tell you some fun things. Like, for instance, the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. All things we hope to talk about today. I mean, maybe not all of them, but if we can, I'd like to hit them all. But even though we've got some wonderful calls on the line, we've got a couple of theists already, and I am excited for them. We have to tell you about last week's Share Your Experience. So I love this. If you're brand new and you don't know, real simple. Every week we give you some questions, some prompt, and we want you to get your answers to that prompt in the comments below this video. So last week we asked you, name one of God's unpopular opinions. And we have our top 3 favorite answers. So when we give you this week's prompt, make sure to get your answer in the comments, because you might get it read out on screen. So number 3 from last week, RC Blazer says, an unpopular opinion of God's is to think it's a good idea to send his people to massacre entire civilizations in his name. Seriously, would any of you want to do that? Yeah, that is a super, super bad opinion on God's part, and has led to more bad things. Weird how that works. He's supposed to be all-knowing and all good in that. Anyway, Number 2, Dwayne Johnson 9798 says God's unpopular opinions: not eating shellfish and pork. Yeah, that's a big one, man.
Bacon.
Yeah, seriously.
Bacon's really a huge thing. Yeah.
And a pork chop. Like, I just want to say this. This is totally just out of, no real relation to much, but like pork chops are really good. Like, I really enjoy pork chops. So, I don't have a pork chop. I'm not going to eat a pork chop later. It just popped into my head. So, like panko crusted, and it doesn't matter.
Well cooked. Not overcooked. Yeah.
Right. Well, let's get black-eyed peas, some greens on the side and stuff. Anyway, now I'm just hungry. Now I'm just telling everybody. It's like I skipped lunch or something. Anyway, number one comment from last week from Titus Gray 4598 says, in the beginning, the universe was created, which made many people angry and has been widely regarded as a bad move. Douglas Adams. I love that quote. I love that quote. And Douglas Adams is freaking awesome. He is. Provided a lot of great stuff for us over the years. But I loved those. I thought all of those are indeed unpopular opinions from God. But we're not done, folks, because we've got a prompt for this week. And before we see the great answers you give us in the comment section below, not in the live chat. Don't do it. I see you about to type in the live chat your answer to this prompt. Don't do it. It goes below the video in the comments, okay? But before that, Jim, what is an example of God's sense of humor? I would like to say here at the ACA, we do not endorse any candidates or any individuals for political office. So just letting you know.
No.
My thoughts would be, okay, and this one might be controversial, Jim. My thoughts would be testicles. What is an example of God's sense of humor? Testicles. Because honestly, I feel like they get in my way more often than not. And it's always in the weirdest ways. Like, it's the dumbest thing. I gently dropped my phone from about this height onto my lap the other day and couldn't breathe for like a full minute straight. Like, that's just absurd. What an absolute joke that we're just walking around with these like kill shots. I don't know. Anyway, I'm excited to see what y'all come up with. I think this prompt is great. There's a lot of room to go. I know our wild and crazy audience will give us some awesome stuff. So again, what is an example of God's sense of humor? Okay. Tune in next week because your comment might be read if you're in the top 3. And if you're not in the top 3, don't feel bad. Just do better. That's really all we ask. We just want the best. We just want the best from all of you. And speaking of the best, we've got some calls, Jim. I am excited. You ready for this?
Let's do it.
Let's talk with Luke. He, him is a theist out in Arizona, wants to talk to us about, sounds like rationality, necessity, existence. You tell us where you want to go, Luke. You're chatting with Jim Barrows and Secular Rarity. What's up?
Hey, guys. I'm just going to state my propositions and see if they work.
Yeah, okay. Sounds great.
All right, here it goes. The existence of God is a rational necessity. If God doesn't exist, then everything is meaningless, including the things I personally find meaningful. But if God does exist, then everything is meaningful, including the things that I find meaningless, like the definition of atheism being a lack of belief. Therefore, God must exist.
Yeah, cool. I appreciate you laying that out. I think that was really well, pretty succinct. I definitely have a problem with the thing about like, if God doesn't exist, then like the meaning stuff, right?
Well, I'm kind of curious as to what God's opinion of what is meaningful would have anything, regardless, any impact on why what you find meaningful wouldn't be meaningful just because God doesn't find it that way, right? That's no different than me going, there's a whole bunch of people who are about to, who find a sporting event that's coming up meaningful and I don't. What does my opinion have to do with their finding that sporting event meaningful? It doesn't, right? It shouldn't, because we're all different. So why does some God's opinion of what's meaningful or meaningless have anything to do with my opinion, your opinion, or Secular Rarity's opinion?
Because God is the ontic referent. He's the thing by which everything else has meaning.
Right. So
well,
that
that's a
goes,
nice claim.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
that goes to my
but
problem. Like,
yeah,
what's the demonstration for that? Like, why are you coming to that conclusion? What's your reasoning to get you to there?
What else would it be? It's not going to
So
be.
that, so okay, so
an
hang on,
argument from ignorance.
Luke, hang on. Let's swap some things out now, okay? I agree. What else could there be, man? Okay. So my response to you now is actually that flabbity over here is actually the thing that you're saying, and you go, well, gosh, SR, that, how did you get to that conclusion? And my response is, what else could it be? Where do we go from here, man? What's the next step in this conversation? You've said this entity has to be the thing that starts it all. And I go, why? And you said, why not? And so I just go, okay, well, this thing has to be the thing that starts it all. And you go, why? And I go, why not? Aren't we in the same position?
I didn't say why. I asked, what is it?
No. The thing that brought us here was you made a claim and said all of this meaning, all of this value, all of this cool whatever stuff around us comes from this source, God. And I said, right. Oh, that's interesting. How'd you get to that conclusion? And the response you gave, and you can, take this back. You can say, oh, hey, my bad. That wasn't what I meant, whatever. But what you said was, what else could it be? And so my response to that is, what's the next step in this conversation? Because it sounds like you and I are essentially on equal footing. I have a better answer than what I'm giving right now, but I'm using this as an example to try to say, do you see how we don't make any progress in this? You're saying it's God. I'm assuming because you're based in Arizona, I'm assuming it's probably a biblical God. Doesn't matter either way, because what if this other person comes along and has their God and they say, nope, it's mine. And you go, well, how'd you get there? And they go, what else could it be? What would your response be to that, man?
What is your God? What is this somebody you're talking about?
Whatever. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the criteria is yet, because we're currently in the boat. We're currently in the boat of saying we both have made a claim. And when somebody says, okay, back that up, our response is, it couldn't be anything else. This is literally incredulity. This is the fallacy of incredulity. It's just us saying we don't know, and so therefore we're sticking with this until you provide a defeater.
But I didn't say that.
No, but you did by saying
exactly
what else could it be? That is so let's just try it again. We just start all over, Luke. We just start all over again. You make a claim. Tell me if I got this claim right. You said all meaning has to come from God, right? Yes or no?
Right.
Okay, cool. How did you get to that conclusion? What's your response to that?
Because it wouldn't be anything else.
Okay, see, there you go. That's literally you doing the fallacy of incredulity, which is saying simply because I currently cannot provide any other answer, my answer must be right to this claim. But you've done nothing to back up your claim, right? Does that make sense?
Different answer? Do you have a different?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter currently, okay? Not until you start to provide something that demonstrates this claim from the beginning. Because all we're at right now is just both of us just saying, well, I've got my thing. And then the other person says, well, how'd you get to it? And then our response is the same, which is, you don't have anything else, bro. So you don't have anything else. I'm saying it's flabbity over here. You're saying it's God. You ask me to back my claim up, and my response is it can't be anything else. And so then I ask you, and you say, well, it can't be anything else. So where do we go? What's the next step here?
But I didn't ask you to back up your claim. I asked, what is flabbity?
And that's fine. But again, do you see the parody? Is what I'm trying to get here. And I mean parody as in ITY, not like ODY. I'm not making fun of. I'm saying these are equal. These claims are equal, and we have to appeal to something else to get more information here. And I'm asking, what is that for you? And if ultimately what you're saying is, I just kind of stuck on this position by default because nobody's ever come up and said nuh-uh to me, Like, that's just not a good way to come to conclusions, man. But hang on a sec. Let me shut up so that Jim can jump in again.
Let me try it this way. I make the claim, I have a white pencil in my hand. And you say, prove it. And I say, well, what else could it be? That's what you said. But if I'm going to prove it, I would simply go, see, here's my hand, here's a pencil. It's in my hand and it's white. Now I've offered you evidence. I haven't said what else could it be, because this pencil could be yellow. And in fact, most people's experience of pencils is that they are yellow, right? Not white until Apple came out with their Apple Pencil, and now maybe it is white. But that's all you said, is what else could it be? And we're like, well, we don't know either, but that's not a good enough answer, right? Just the way what else could it be is not a good answer to well, how do you know it's a white pencil? How do I know that you have a white pencil in your hand? Well, what else could it be? Well, it could be my mouse pad. Right? There's a lot of things that could be in my hand. There's a lot of colors pencils can be. That's not a good enough answer.
But
does that make sense?
In your hand is not ontic. But yeah, but a white pencil in your hand is not an ontic reference.
Right, but are you understanding what the problem is? Because it sounds like the difficulty we're having here is recognizing the equal footing that these claims are on. And that's the issue that we're having, is because basically what you've just said is, I just accept this thing without justification. And then somebody goes, well, that's weird, man. You probably got to have something to justify it. And supposedly, based on the information you've given us, your justification is simply nobody has disproven it. But that is a known construction in logic that does not lead to reliable outcomes. We've actually gone so far as to give it a name. It's not just a fallacy. It's a special kind called the fallacy of incredulity. We know that this argument anywhere in the paragraph does not reliably get us to the conclusion at the end. So if you know that that's the case, what do you do? How do you combat that on your own? Like, do you accept this reasoning for anything else in the world? Because if your answer is yes, I'd love some demonstration of that. If your answer is no, then you're committing another fallacy, which is special pleading, which is saying everything else in the world follows this rule except for my thing, and that's why it's right. So do you accept this reasoning as an answer for anything else? Just like I thought the example Jim gave was great. I understand that what you're saying is ultimately, yeah, but the thing that I'm talking about isn't like contingent and doesn't have all of these, like it's a necessary, it has to be. And I'm just agreeing with you on those characteristics. I'm giving you those toys, as J. Mike likes to say. You have all of that. You have the fact that this thing is, in your definition, your understanding, a necessity. It absolutely has to be. And all I'm saying is, you actually aren't justified in doing that, because I can say, nope, it's a necessary entity, just like Graham Oppie proposes, and it is naturalistic entirely. There is nothing connected to a god. And your response is, well, how do you know that? And my response is, what else could it be? And you see how we're back into the same rut we've essentially been in this whole time.
But I didn't say that. You did.
No, again, look,
you literally said, what else could it be? That was your answer to our question of how did you come to that conclusion? You said word for word, what else could it be?
Yeah. And the reason I got you muted, Luke, is because I'm going to let the call go, because I don't know that Jim and I can do more at this point other than just asking you to watch this back and watch what you said the very first time. Okay. I think this has been a good call in the sense, none of us have been yelling or name calling or anything. We're butting heads, but that's what we want. Right. But what I really want is for you to go back and watch what your response was the very first time we pushed back. Because from here on, you've continued to say, no, I didn't say that. No, I didn't make the claim like that. Nah, man, that wasn't what I was getting at. But it definitely was. It definitely was what you were getting at. And I think the reason you're trying to walk some of that back is because you recognize it's actually not a good answer. So yeah, what else could it be? Is essentially just you saying nobody's come along to prove otherwise, but that doesn't show that your thing is right. All it shows is, hey, maybe there isn't something currently that's a defeater. But yeah, man, like I said, got you on mute and I'm going to let you go right now. Watch this back because I think you will be surprised how quickly you do make the claim. What else could it be? And that's problematic. I mean, we didn't go very far in that conversation for the exact reason that I was trying to lay out from the beginning, right, Jim? Like, if that's your response when somebody says, "Hey, back up that claim," and your response just is, "Well, do you have anything that disproves it?" How does that lead us to any conclusion? How do we get out of the bed in the morning? Like, it could be lava on my floor when I step on the ground. Like, do you have a defeater against that? You know, what else could it be?
And that answer, I mean, in very limited conditions, that answer can be true. I mean, the classic example is Sherlock Holmes' Sign of the Four. It's a locked room murder mystery. Sure. Murder victim is in a locked room that can only be locked from the inside. And the first thing Holmes does is prove that nobody could have been inside and it could not have been locked from inside. So in which case he says, what else could it be but somebody locking it externally?
Right. Because we have all these external parameters that are setting up something very, very, a scenario that is very, very specific. And then we're using our logic and our understanding of how the world has worked around us repeatedly to say, most likely, people aren't just going to suddenly materialize out of nothingness, right? In the middle of this room to kill somebody. The door's
and
locked.
we know what the physics are. We can know everything about the room. And then we do that. And that's exactly what Holmes does in his investigation. It's one of the few times I can remember where he actually does everything the cops did. He normally doesn't work that way. Right? He sees things they don't. He notices things. He comes to conclusions they don't, but very rarely does he do exactly everything the cops did. Because Lestrade is only an idiot compared to Sherlock Holmes. Dr. Watson is also only an idiot compared to Sherlock Holmes. Right. And so they did all these things. He redoes them because he can't believe it either. And then he goes, oh, you have to, because he knows how locks work. Right. So he knows all these things and he can eliminate all the possibilities. This is not something we can do with natural science and the natural world.
Yeah.
We don't know enough to eliminate all of the possibilities. There are things we still don't know. We still don't know how quantum gravity works. We still don't know all this stuff. And so we can't make that same conclusion because the world is bigger than a room.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you brought that up because, that was a point I wanted to touch on before we moved. Yeah, there are just so many potential answers. And you don't get to a conclusion because your response is, well, we just haven't found a better conclusion. You get to a conclusion because the information points exclusively towards that conclusion and discounts the others. Again, that's why science doesn't prove anything, right? Because we can never completely get rid of all those variables. But either way, I thought a good call. And Luke, seriously, I hope you watch that back. I hope you call back in, whether it's Jim and myself or not. I think you'll have a good conversation if you can. Again, not saying that your conclusion is even necessarily wrong yet. Just simply saying that response, that construction is known to be problematic and not give us good conclusions.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we're definitely not saying you're wrong. We're saying
we hadn't even gotten to that yet. Luke, call us back. We'll tell you how you're wrong next time. I'm teasing. I'm joking. We might. We don't know. Depends on how good of a mood we're in. But before we grab some of these other wonderful calls, and again, guys, we have open lines. If you heard that call with Luke and you're like, oh man, you guys are so freaking wrong. It is so elementary, my dear Rarity, to prove you wrong. Do it. It's times right now, 512-991-9242 or tiny.cc/call-AXP. So we make it available. But I actually am going to say some nice things about some of our wonderful viewers because they've given us money. They have sent us some super chats, and I am always excited to read those. And if you post a super chat, as long as it's appropriate, like don't say anything obviously over the line. But I don't think these are currently, so I'm going to read them. We got $5 from Rainbow Wolf saying, us queers make it a virtue to be a proud lion. Anti-queer religions make it a virtue to be a sheep. I love that distinction. I think that is great. And then we got $5 from Jay Schroeder just saying, thanks, guys. Well, thank you, Jay. And thank you to all of those that support. I know we got a bunch of members and Patreon people and whatnot. And you guys help make this possible. But we gotta be a little gracious to some of the other people that make it possible, like our wonderful theistic callers. We're gonna go out to Pennsylvania and talk with Art. He, him. Wants to talk about the ultimate ground of existence being God. So kind of similar to the last one. What's up, Art? You're chatting with Jim and SR.
Hi, Jim and SR.
Hey.
I called in wanting to talk about that, but then you guys talked about hell. So I'm going to leave it up to you. Would you rather me talk about ultimate ground of existence or hell?
Well, we did screen you on the ultimate ground of existence. We always like to be kind to them. So let's start with that one. And if it goes well, and we got some time, Art, let's touch on some hell stuff. I always love talking about hell.
Okay, cool. The idea is that I regard God as ultimate ground of existence.
Okay.
To unpack that, I would define what I mean by ultimate ground of existence. Number one, I would discuss if the concept, which I've defined, refers to anything real. That would be number two. And number three, I would justify or give my reasons for calling it God. So I can do that.
I think the beginning, which would be helpful for me, is just establishing what you mean by the ultimate ground of existence.
Sure. The idea is that a table's made of wood, so it depends on the wood for its existence. The wood could exist without the table existing. So the wood is the ground of existence of the table.
Sure.
The wood exists because of the molecules. The molecules exist because of the atoms. You eventually get down to the 17 elementary particles of the standard model. Now, the idea is that the trajectory of science is moving towards the one. We have innumerable blades of grass.
Wait. Hold up, Art.
You just lost me.
Yeah. I'm worried we're going to go down a little bit of a different path. Let me maybe ask a couple of questions to help clarify.
Sure.
You said we got a wooden table. The wood is the grounding of the existence of that table. Did that table have to exist? Was it necessary? Is it a requirement that table?
No, I'm not talking about.
Okay, well, hang on. Yeah, but hang on, because I think this might help myself at the very least, for sure. Did that wood have to exist?
No.
Okay, cool. And we can just keep going back. I'm not gonna walk us through it like this. But
you lost me when you went from the 17 particles.
Yeah.
To science is moving to the one, and I'm like,
yeah, I'm confused on that too.
All of a sudden, I'm taking back to Babylon 5.
but real quick, Jim. So I'm not gonna go all the way back to the atoms and whatever. Not gonna do all of that. But like, does existence have to exist? I guess is what comes to my mind. Like, so
No.
It seems to me if there's an ultimate ground of existence, what you're saying is that non-existence or like pure philosophical nothing is possible. Is that the stance you take?
No. What I'm saying is we know the universe exists.
Yeah. I'm with you there.
Okay. I'm saying that my hypothesis is that it is a manifestation of one thing.
Yeah, I
And
get
my
that, but
point
hang
is,
on. I think you've already taken a
okay,
massive step, Art, that we don't have justification to take yet. So let's stay
okay,
with just existence. I mean, tell me if I'm
right.
wrong here. Is it a true dichotomy? Exist, not exist? Is that a true dichotomy? Is there any other option there?
I don't think there is, no.
I don't either. Is it possible for non-existence in this capacity that we're trying to talk about? Yes, we exist currently. Okay, fair enough. The question on the table, I think, is really, is non-existence, is true nothingness possible? Could that be? Could it be the case that not only do I not exist and Jim's white pencil not exist, but nothing exists? There is absolutely nothing. Is that possible in your eyes?
In my eyes, I don't know.
Okay, so then it kind of sounds like this there needs to be an ultimate ground of existence may not be the case. Because if it's not possible for non-existence to ever be a thing to begin with, then existence always has to be, right?
Well, that's fine, but we
Okay.
know that things
So then
exist.
no grounding of existence in that construction, right? There's no
No,
need to figure that out, right? There's nothing there that grounds that existence because there couldn't be any other choice. Existence in and of itself is necessary.
um, if you want to say it's necessary, that's fine. That's not my point. My point is seeing everything. What I'm saying is everything can be pictured as a manifestation of one thing. Now, science has not gotten to one thing, but science is moving that way in the sense that you reduce the multiplicity of the universe to, I read once, there are 10,000 different molecules on Earth. That goes down to 100 atoms. That goes down to 17 elementary particles.
You're talking about
Right.
types.
Science,
You're talking about categories. You're
huh?
not saying there's only like 10,000 molecules. You're saying there's like
Well,
10,000 categories of different molecules, right?
well,
Yes,
it
the
doesn't.
entire universe is made up of 17 particles. Okay, fine, we're there.
Yeah.
Let's assume that's true. So
Okay.
what? How do you get to God?
Okay, so I'm getting there. So now, the hypothesis is that eventually we're going to find it's a manifestation of one thing. Now,
No, okay, how do you prove? How do you
How do we get-
disprove that?
well, you disprove that if science had gotten to atoms and atoms were not, if you weren't able to split atoms, and science had said for the past century, the universe is atoms in the void, and there's 100 different kinds, roughly 100 different kinds of atoms. If that's where science had stopped, that would be a disproof. You'd say the universe is not a manifestation of one
Okay,
thing.
then why isn't the 17 particles, why is the 17 quantum fields not the same thing as you just said for atoms?
That's exactly right. I'm saying my hypothesis is that there is one. Science does not say that there is one. I mean, if it did, we'd all know it, I guess.
Well, okay, let's assume that they say no, that's all one part. It really is only one wave. We just see 17 frequencies. What does that do for you? What does that do for your concept of God?
My concept of God is based on the idea that there is one ultimate ground of existence. That might be wrong.
I just granted you. Let's assume for a moment that there isn't 17 different particles or 17 different waves, that they're all there's 17 different frequencies of one wave. There's one thing. How does that get me to God?
Okay. Well, let me give you a few quotes here, if you don't mind. Paul Tillich.
I kind of do. Yeah, hang on. I kind of do mind about the quotes. Hang on. I just want to explain though, Art, so that it just doesn't sound like I'm hand waving them away. If I responded to you by saying, hey, here's a quote from somebody a long time ago that says, whatever Art says next is dumb, don't listen to him. You'd obviously, rightfully wave that away because it's like, yeah, I don't really care what that person says, right? Unless they could demonstrate, for instance, like that you have been proven to be a liar, which I don't think is the case, Art. I think you're being very honest and genuine with us here. So yeah, we don't need to appeal to quotes of what really smart people said. Let's just go look at the stuff that they're actually able to demonstrate to us.
And also, you mentioned science, so you should be quoting studies. I mean, if you're quoting a study, that's fine. If you're going to quote a set of physics laws, I'm okay with that. But the question is, if I grant that the 17 quantum particles are actually one, how do I get to God? Your answer is, let me give you a bunch of quotes. You understand why I'm kind of like, I don't care, right?
I accept that. My bad. I accept it. The point is that in theology, there are theologians in many religions who say God is ultimate, that they say God is subsistent being itself. God is in non-dual Vedanta, it is Brahman, which is specifically the basis of everything that's taught in Vedanta. What I'm saying now, Jim, is that in theology, in religions, they say that there is one ultimate ground. That is not.
Now, my problem with before you go any further, right? Because I had a problem when you started with the word theology, and I let you go to try and finish your thought. But when you say theology, I hear fiction author. And so you've just said that a bunch of fiction authors say everything is one. And I have completely stopped caring at that point. I don't care what theologists say. I will care what a theologist says when one of them proves God exists. And you haven't done that yet. I don't care if all of them say, or some of them say, there is one thing. And the reason that I don't is because ideas travel around the world. And so just because a bunch of religions say the same thing doesn't mean they're all saying something that's true. That just means an idea has permeated that far, right? Because when it comes to theology, the problem we have is, how do we know any of it's true?
Well, Jim, you had hypothetically granted that there is one thing.
Yes.
Now, and then you said, what is the justification for calling it God? Well, if theologians say God.
No, I said, how do you get to God? How do you get to God, right? That's a slightly different question, but go ahead.
I'm saying that if science, let's suppose, just to make it clear, let's suppose science had proven that there was one thing. Let's just suppose that.
Okay, I've granted that, yep.
Okay, and let's suppose theologians for 2 millennia have been saying there is one thing underlying the universe.
Why do I care? Why do I care what theologians say about science? Because theology's got to prove there's a God. They haven't done it. And just because you have 2 coincidences doesn't mean that correlation is not causation. You got 2 things that are correlated. Science says there's one thing and theology says there's one thing. Doesn't mean anything, doesn't have any type of causal thing. You still haven't proven God, because what you haven't done, you have to do, is eliminate a natural cause. Until you eliminate that natural cause, you can't, I mean, you've got to either prove that God did it, and by proving God exists, or you have to eliminate all natural causes.
Okay.
Theology has nothing to do with it.
Right. Okay. I think I can address that. It goes down to our definition of God. Now, I'm going to maintain that God is a subjective term. Now, what I mean by that is that if I say a woman is a certain weight, a certain height, certain hair color, that's objective. If I say a woman is a real beauty, that's subjective. Now, God, I am claiming, is used subjectively to talk about something which is ultimate, which is
okay, that's fine. But
so
is the ultimate hang on real quick, Art, because if your God is subjective, then basically what you're saying is my God is just a thought. Jim and I probably aren't gonna push back on that. Like, yeah, God exists in that
your God could be completely natural causes, right? Your God could be completely natural causes, which would not be the God of any theological stance, right? So your theological thing is even more deader than a doornail than it was before by your own stance.
It's
and
worse
perfectly
than
not.
deism.
Yeah,
No,
it's worse than deism.
It's
It's not even.
Deism is really bad, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not even. It's not pantheism. It's not the God of Spinoza. Your God is a perfectly natural happenstance.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. And you're just adding on these other
Spinoza,
characteristics that make you feel good, but the justification for adding on those characteristics isn't there.
This is the God of Spinoza.
Okay, well then yeah, but hang on, Art. If that's what your God is functionally the exact same as existence, which is problematic, not for me as the non-believer in your version of God, but as you, the person who wants to then add on these characteristics and come to various conclusions based on this thing. But when at the end of the day, you're just saying, nah, I mean, like what I'm talking about is God is just like, matter and energy and all of the stuff around us. It's like, well, yeah, man, we're on the same page that stuff exists, but you're in the boat now of pointing out a cup with liquid in it and saying, I call that a car. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that? How is that more clarity? How is that helpful? How does that not lead to problems in terms of us actually functioning in the world around us? If that's all your God is worthless. And it's not something that you can ever really come to any conclusions on, because all you have to play with is all the same stuff that we do. The issue, though, is that that's not where you stop. That's not where you stop. You don't just stop with, yeah, existence is a thing. If that's all you said, then it'd be like, okay, cool. No, you add extra attributes onto it. Like, does your God care about lying? Does your God care about murder? What about adultery? Because a lot of people's gods do. And if your God is just the same as existence, then just show me an Adam that gives a shit about who I fuck. That like, do you see the frustration that I have with a lot of these types of versions of a God?
Well, I do. This the idea is the ultimate ground of existence. The idea is similar to when you dream and you dream of a car, a house, a person. The ground of those things is your own mind stuff. Like if you dream of a table, the table isn't made of wood, it's made of your mind stuff.
I think this is a problem, is you're collapsing these categories. You're using these terms that are polysemous because that's how all words are. And you're picking one that sort of overlaps with another concept, another word. And what you're doing is you're taking both of those words and those concepts and squishing it into this one little ball. But the problem is that, again, no extra clarity is provided in this construction, and B, at worst, it leads to harmful conclusions because we don't know what the fuck we're talking about, man. Because at the end of the day, in that scenario that you just gave, my mind is still not the grounding. My mind is not the grounding of those dreams. You know why? Because my mind seemingly is contingent. My mind is not necessary. It could not possibly be the objective, ultimate, fundamental grounding of all absolute instantiation of existence. It couldn't possibly. I'm only 29. I didn't exist 50 years ago, man. And so my mind isn't the grounding of my dreams. What is the grounding, seemingly, is existence, which you already said, hey, man, there may not be a possibility for not real, true non-existence. So then it makes this whole conversation about grounding existence pretty worthless, especially if ultimately at the end of the day, all you're saying is my God is indistinguishable from just basic existence. It sounds like what you're saying is existence makes existence possible and existence exists, which is like, yeah, I'm with you, bro. But why waste any effort whatsoever calling it a god? Is it just for the community aspect so that you can pat others on the back and say, like, you believe in God, I believe in God. Maybe our gods aren't exactly the same, but at least we're both God believers. Because that I would understand, man. I mean, I completely understand that. That's one of the most basic human things out there. Like, we just want to be around people that like us and agree with us and whatnot. But it just feels like there isn't any substance here, and you are twisting yourself into knots to get nowhere. You've ended up at the exact same place.
Okay, well, in Vedanta, in some versions of Buddhism, the idea is if God is our ground, that the whole bunch of stuff follows from that. For instance, people who want to become realized, self-realized, want to realize what they are. And some of them spend their lives going off in caves to do it.
Can people do that and want that and get to that without there actually being a God? Without there actually being something that people are most people, when they're talking about a God, which I'm putting in quotes right now, because I don't think that concept is super well defined, but most people are talking about supernatural, which is also in quotes, divinity, which is also in quotes. Okay. So the problem with all of that, man, is just where are you getting to any of that? How are we getting to any of that? And here's the most important question. If for a second we just go, you know what? Let's give SR his toys this time. And let's just say it abso-freaking-lutely doesn't exist. Are you now telling me it is impossible to get to those things that you were just mentioning? Could people not be realized in that world too? Is it not possible that out of the billions of people that have existed on this earth, they've all been freaking wrong about the actual existence of a deity, and instead, the thought that the deity exists allows them to reach these same conclusions? Is that possible in your eyes? Because I'll just be honest, man. If you say yes, it makes your concept of a god that much more unimpressive. It makes that god even less explanatory.
Well, is it possible for people to be mistaken? Of course.
But yeah, you're right. And still get to conclusions. It is possible that I look at a calculus problem and go, 2. And that's the right answer. But then when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, man, how'd you get this? And I was like, well, I don't know. I used a derivative of f of whatever and just added like 12 and we got to 2. So it's possible that I get to the right conclusion, right? Quote unquote, the right conclusion, the same conclusion that you just brought up to me, and just be wrong about the starting point. Like, so again, it doesn't feel like there's much substance to this, I guess is why I'm having difficulty, Art.
Well, okay, I'll just leave it as there are religions that talk about self-realization and talk about enlightenment and talk about God as ultimate ground of existence. And because there's only one universe, I equate that with I mean, I'm trying to say that science is going towards the same direction. But I would also say that supernatural is a vacuous term. We have no way of determining if anything is outside of nature.
Why do you think, hang on, real quick, Art. Why do you think the term supernatural is vacuous, but your term God has more clarity? What is the thing that is not equal on these two sides of the scale here? I agree with you on the supernatural. You said, hey man, that's vacuous. There ain't shit behind that. I'm like, yep, I'm with you. But then you present this other understanding, this other concept over here of God. What is the substance behind that makes that more palatable and clarifying for you than the vacuous term? What is the differentiation there, man? Because I'm not seeing any.
Okay, well, the differentiation is something I already mentioned. I believe, I maintain that the word God is used to refer to what a person considers ultimate and worthy of veneration. And
so it's circular. So it's completely circular. You're saying by definition, this thing is the grounding because by definition, this thing is the grounding.
No.
That's what it sounds like.
No. I'm saying, look, I'm saying if a Muslim converts to Christianity, they begin to regard Jesus as God. If a Christian converts to Islam, they cease to regard Jesus as God. What you or me or Jim or anyone regard as God is up to us. Some people will say God is love, and they will mean that literally. For them, that is ultimate. That even.
But now now we've gone back to I've granted you that 17 particles are really one particle. How do you get to God? And now you're on this. Everybody's definition of God is whatever they want it to be, and it has no grounding in anything. And you're saying that theology seems to be going the same way as science. And I would just like to point out and go back to my original statement. When you say theology, I hear fiction writer. When you say that theology says there's one thing and science is headed that direction, what I hear is Star Trek predicted tablets and the iPhone, right? Because that's exactly what happened.
There's actually more justification for that, though, Jim. Like, there's actually more justification.
We'll go into that.
I know
right?
We're not going to do that today.
Yeah. So you have done nothing here but go round in circles and attempt to define your way into a God. And you've left science completely behind. Right.
Okay. We can leave it at that if you want to. I mean, I don't want to keep.
I think
now, if you want to
go ahead, Art.
I was going to say, if you want to grant me a little bit about hell, I think you'll like what I have to say about that much more.
No.
So I would so love to, Art. We've already been on this call for 25 minutes and I got a bunch of other calls. But here's what I'll tell you to do, man. I know both myself and Jim are going to be back on in the next couple of weeks. I mean, don't not call into the other hosts because they're also pretty cool too. I mean, Johnny, we never know. But no, they're great too. But seriously, Art, I enjoyed this conversation. I thought it was really good, man. I did feel like we made some progress, even though maybe not, all of the progress I wanted to make. But I really do. I think this was it was a good call. It was genuine. I feel like there is potential for us to really hash stuff out even more in the future. So definitely, man, give us a call back. Seriously. I think that was a good call. I really do. I still, I really have some problems with the deism and pantheism and the Spinoza, Einstein's God stuff. It does. I'll be honest. It does get under my skin a little. It really does.
Yeah, you can't get to any God concept by any religion from Spinoza's God. I just don't see how you do it.
And it's just,
you got a lot of work to do.
We just end up, I feel like spinning our wheels so hard and we put so much freaking effort into it. And then at the end of it, like, we're literally in the same boat. We're in the same boat of just like both people came to the conversation being like, well, we're probably real. I mean, sure. Like, don't have an answer to hard solipsism. Don't have an answer to like laws of logic, like fine, but we just accept that and we move on, and it's like, okay, so we're here, we agree on that. And then we go all the way around to get back to, well, we're here and we agree on that. You just keep wanting to use a different term that I think has a lot of baggage to it that makes it worse.
Right. Because we haven't gotten to whether or not the Spinoza's God has willpower or anything else, right? What's the difference between Spinoza's God and a hurricane?
Right. Yeah. How do you tell the difference? And so now are you in the boat of saying that all the terrible stuff that happens in the world is actually Spinoza's God's plan? Like this hurricane just came through and destroyed your whole town. Like, too bad, because that's God's plan. Like, I don't know. It just brings up problems. But
oh yeah.
That's okay, because we're still having fun and we've still got a bunch of wonderful callers. Folks, again, we still got time. I know we've already been, talking for a little bit, but we have time. Okay. If you really want to have these good conversations, call in now, because as we get closer to the end of the show, we got to move through them quicker. Okay. But I am going to tell you some important things. Like, for instance, there's a website. well, hang on, I take a step back. There's a thing called the internet. And on the internet, there are these things called websites. And one of those websites is atheist-community.org. And on atheist-community.org are printable call-in flyers. Now, these are wonderful because you can post them wherever with permission. Do not just freaking start posting them, people. Don't do that, okay? Don't make us look bad. Don't be a good member of this atheist community, please, okay? So with permission, post these guys to bulletin boards, if there's some space available in a restaurant, again, with permission. And this way people know when our show is and know to call us and defend the faith and give us their thoughts on things, even if I yell at you about your deism or whatever, I promise I won't yell too much. But also on that website is some other things. Like, for instance, all of the cool goings on that are happening here at the Atheist Community of Austin. So we want you to know about this stuff. We've always got super duper cool things, which, like, for instance, did y'all know we do this thing like once a month generally where, like, a bunch of people actually gather in the library itself. And then we all hang out and we take calls and eat pizza, break bread together as good non-believers do. But anyway, head to www.atheist-community.org and you can learn all about the organization itself, its policies, and how you can get involved because we always need some help, you guys. There are always room for more volunteers. But that being said, we have some other really good calls I am excited to get to. Jim, you ready?
Yep, ready. Let's do this.
Keep it rolling. We're going to talk about free will with Jack, him in Maryland. Hey, Jack, you're talking with Secular Rarity and Jim Barrows. What is up?
Oh, not much, guys. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good, man. So yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll start off. I'll put some cards on the table. Jim, tell me if you feel differently, but I'm not convinced that free will actually is a thing. So you might have to give me an argument for free will before you give me an argument for God using free will. Jim, where do you fall on that?
Pretty close to that, I think. There's some really interesting speculation regarding quantum physics that would indicate that even if presented with the exact same situation over again, we might make a different decision, but that might be due to more to quantum fluctuations than anything else. But yeah, as a general rule, you need to prove that we have libertarian free will in some way, shape, or form.
So barring a deeper understanding of quantum weirdness, it sounds like Jim and I pretty much come down on the same side there. But no, I mean, that is a good point. Yeah. So Jack, what with all that on the table, what do you got for us, man?
Yeah, I mean, well, to be honest, you guys may have this may not be relevant to you, Mac, this case, because it is sort of an if-then argument from free will. I'm happy to talk about why I believe in free will, or why I think other people are reasonable to believe in free will. But just to be clear, if free will isn't accepted, I don't have an argument for God.
Let's hear the argument, the if then in incorporating free will, right? Because maybe there's still something else that Jim and I have a problem with when it comes to that construction in and of itself. Like maybe we could do the, okay, cool, we grant the free will part of it, because there's still this further problem, down the road. So lay it out for us real quick, and if we find okay, yeah, we really need to hash out more on why you believe free will, we'll go down that route, because that's always interesting too, I think.
Yeah, so I would start kind of from a cosmological place. This is not the sum total of my argument, but just the assertion that the universe needs an uncaused cause. I know, obviously, that there are plenty of atheists who will often point out that there's no reason in that specific statement to assume that uncaused cause has to be a God, has to be conscious, anything like that.
Right.
But that is kind of the first premise of the argument. So if you guys want to talk about that first, we can, or I can just move on to the next three, and then I'll be done.
Jim, where do you want to go? I'll let you drive.
I'm willing to let the kalam stand as it is. I think quantum physics completely blows it out of the water. But yeah, I'll let it stand for now.
Cool. So yeah, give us the next step, Jack.
All right. So if the universe needs an uncaused cause and free will truly exists, meaning that free will is not contingent on anything, is not caused by anything, it is our free decision to do a thing irregardless of, physics like Jim was talking about, or any sort of chemical necessity. If free will exists, it is an uncaused cause. If it is the only uncaused cause that we know of, then I would argue it is rational to assume that the universe was created by a consciousness. And the reason I would assert this is basically like in nature.
Okay, hang on just a second, Jack. Hang on, because I found where I have a problem. You're doing the thing that one of our previous callers was doing, right? Where you're saying if the only evidence we have currently is free will being the only uncaused cause, right? Then that means, this other conclusion over here, right? The problem with saying that is you haven't done the necessary steps to get to that conclusion. What that tells us is that currently this may be the best option that we know of, but to rest our laurels and say this is the answer is not possible. That it's still the argument from incredulity, because we haven't been able to rule out all of the other potential causes. We've ruled out potential causes that we know of currently. How do we know tomorrow we don't find another potential cause? And if that's possible in and of itself, then all we can say with this construction so far, again, with us granting, a bunch of good stuff to get here, we're saying, okay, let's just say free will is an uncaused cause. Let's just say free will is the only thing that we know of, right? Let's just say agents are the only thing that we know of that have this free will. Therefore, the only thing that could possibly have created everything was the only uncaused cause we know about. Nope. See, that's the leap. That's the leap you made. Yeah, and again, if you just change the wording to currently, the most likely answer would be this, that just shores it up a little bit. But then it doesn't have the same weight that I think it needs to have to get to the conclusion of God, right? Yeah, because God's not a most likely, God's a definite. He does exist in your view.
Sure, but it's sort of the same way I would look at science, right? Like if we found a mineral in the ground, like iron, say, and we know that there is a certain process which creates the molecular structure of iron. We don't know there isn't some other process that might create that iron that we might find one day. But you would not be irrational to say that if you find iron in the ground, that the only process we've ever find is what we assume happened. Like that's how.
Boom. You wouldn't be irrational to say that, but you would be irrational to say what you said, which would be there is only one way to create iron. If we find iron in the ground, it must be from this singular process. The first thing you said, I'm on board with, but the thing that I said is more analogous to the thing that you said initially with God. Does
and
sure.
Yeah, Jim, please.
I kind of want to back up a little bit. And you said, I think you said that free will is an uncaused cause. Is that correct, what you said?
Yeah, I would say if free will is not an uncaused cause, then it's not my definition of free will. That's like how I would define free will.
So, but we don't have any example of a free will existing without the 3 pounds of fat that sits between our ears. So is that, do you have an example of a free will that exists without a brain?
Well, I suppose not.
How do you get to free will as an uncaused cause? And I'm granting you libertarian free will, just to be clear, I'm granting that. How do you get to an uncaused cause if free will depends on a brain?
Very good point.
Well, because I would argue that the presence of a brain doesn't necessarily cause free will. We have children who are born basically brain dead, and they have the same physical makeup for the most part, including some things that doctors even can't figure out themselves.
Do we have,
really a
any
counter-argument.
demonstration of free will coming, something that you would classify as free will? Do we have any demonstration of that being in something that does not have the squishy mass in our head? Do we have any example of that whatsoever? Like, it seems like this bottle definitely does not have a brain, definitely not like mine. I haven't looked at mine entirely, but I'm pretty confident. Does this bottle have free will, or is there any other demonstration in that category? Because if not,
I would say
go ahead.
none to the degree of skepticism, which I think
I think Jim's point. I think Jim's point holds a lot of weight. Then,
do you mind if I kick you while you're down? Because I got one. I got one more.
So, right, Jack? At least I mean, that's the kindest way for anybody to do that.
We have examples of human beings with brain damage whose emotional centers of the brain have been damaged. These people cannot make a decision. They're hungry. They know they need to eat, but they cannot decide to eat even. This is how far it goes. Do they have free will?
No, I suppose they don't.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, truly, because
so
that was something
free
that
will,
I was thinking.
So what you just said to me is that free will is dependent on active emotional centers of the brain.
Well, it would seem to be that way, but I guess I would just say, like, to my, like, I would assume, like
I said,
going on with soul or something. I get it, but yeah.
Right. You see why I asked the question, right? Because it kind of puts a damper on my granting you the true free will exists, right? The libertarian free will exists. It kind of kicks that right in the nuts, I think. But you still have to, since there is no way for us to say, or there is no reason to believe that free will or a mind exists without a brain. We have no reason to conclude that. Wouldn't that seem to indicate that, is it correlational mind to brain, or is it causal brain to mind?
Yeah, I mean, it would, well, correlation doesn't equal causation, but it would seem to suggest that it was causal brain to mind.
Oh, so free will is not an uncaused cause.
Yeah, we at least need the cause of the brain, right? And a specific wiring of the brain. It's not just any construction of the brain. It has to be this really, really limited set of what it, the form that it can take.
Right.
But no, I'm glad you went down that route, Jim. That was definitely something that was coming up to my mind as well. That was a little difficult.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we're still not we're not at an uncaused cause here, right? We don't have any reason to accept an uncaused cause when it comes to free will. Just to come back to the point, right?
I can give my reason why I feel free will exists. And
let's hit that real quick.
It basically is. Yeah, it kind of seems like a logical necessity to me. Like, I understand what Jim is saying about, questions about, the brain being contingent, or being the thing which determines free will. And obviously, if you look at Darwinian evolution, it's not like there's a very clear line to say this was an ape and this was a man and this thing that was before an ape, was whatever, and it had this level of consciousness. But it's sort of like the problem of hard solipsism to me, because I perceive myself as having free will. And if I don't have free will, then it would seem to me that the world is just as much a sort of illusion as any sort of hard solipsis problem would suggest. So it's like, I wouldn't know how to reason.
I mean, why, what's the problem if it is the case? Like, what's the problem if, for instance, okay, like truly, my lights turn out, my brain shuts down, my organs fail, and then I have this experience of waking up again, and some, I don't know, futuristic-y scientist pulls something off the top of my head and says, hey, man, wasn't that shit crazy? It was all a simulation. You were actually the only conscious creature in that entire existence. Does that, like, what does that actually change about any of the things that happened, right? Like, I still had conversations with people. 1 + 1 still equals 2, you know, like it just doesn't seem to actually be problematic if we are truly living in a simulation. It doesn't seem to have any problems, right? And the same thing is true, at least from my perspective, on free will. Like, I get the understanding of, like, well, it just kind of feels like it's one of those you have to grants, otherwise you can't move forward. And it's like, let's investigate that then. Like, is it possible that everything in existence had something that determined it? And if so, like, what's the problem with us being where we are now based on that chain, right? And in fact, I would ask that. Is there anything out there that doesn't have something that determined it, that doesn't have some cause beforehand? It sounds like we're going to get to the one thing. We're going to get to the singular thing that violates the rule that every other thing has to fall under. And that's the problem of special pleading. So we're just back to the same problem that we were with one of the other callers again. So I get why it seems reasonable on the face, right? I get the intuition. But I think when we really investigate that intuition, what we find is that it really just is a claim that doesn't have anything to support it. And we don't need to assume that claim to make progress. We need to assume logic. We need to assume there's something else out there other than me. But we don't need to assume that I have this, ability to do things that are not determined by prior causal chains. We can still make progress without that assumption.
I mean, look, I don't want to take any more of your guys' time than you want to give, or just overstay my welcome.
I think it was a good call. I think it was great, Jack.
Yeah, I guess I just would say that, like, I don't know, if I can't be sure of my own existence in the sense that I'm free, I don't see how you can build like like you said, we have to assume logic. And I would agree, but I just don't understand how you can have logic without consciousness. And that's sort of the problem I come to. Again,
you can't.
I think that's going to take us down a route.
Right. And I agree with you. See, logic and math are the map. They're not the territory. Mm-hmm. And maps only exist because consciousness exists. Doesn't mean the territory doesn't. Right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It seems to be the case that if all human minds had never existed, but everything else about the universe was exactly the same as it is right now, but no human conscious minds ever existed or will ever exist, it seems that the codification of mathematics doesn't happen. But the actual things that mathematics is describing still do. A single rock that gets split because another rock falls on it is now 2 rocks, baby. Whether or not somebody is there to come along and go, yes, this is because it falls within the 3 foundational understandings of logic. A must equal A cannot be not A. We don't need that for the thing to still be the case. What we do need, we need the conscious people to make the codification. We need us as people to write the shit down for sure. Right. But I think, Jack, you touched on something that will lead to a very long and interesting conversation. And so I am going to say to you the exact thing I said to the other callers, which is we are going to let you go now. But it was a great freaking call, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you definitely need to call us back. I am going to be stingy on this one, Jack. You call back when Jim or myself are on again, and not before that. No, seriously, Jack. It was a great call.
It was a good
man.
conversation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I did. I liked that, and I think we were right on the precipice of hitting a conversation that keeps all of our wonderful crew here for another hour, which leads me to a realization that, Jim, we are We're over an hour into this wonderful show, and we have yet to thank the incredible people that make this possible. Can we get those faces on screen? Those people right there. That is our freaking crew cam. A wonderful group of people. Greg is still very disappointed with the scheduling today. I see that. I'm so sorry, Greg. It will be over soon. This will not last forever. But not
somebody
only,
get him another shot.
Yeah, right. Not only do we have all of those incredible people who make it so easy for Jim, myself, and all the other wonderful hosts to just come on here and screw around and have fun, but we've also got people like our audio operators, our video operators, the notes and timestamp takers, our mods and call screeners, and our wonderful people like Justin Looney, who answers so many of the emails that y'all send. And that is an invaluable, absolutely unprecedentedly amazing task that man does.
Secularity, were you around when we were answering our own email?
No, that must have been crazy, though.
That explains why you don't have that haunted look in your eye.
Yes. I was lucky enough to come in like just right after, and I can honestly tell you, it's a lot of work. There is a lot of, and we love it, by the way. I'm not saying this to say like don't send emails. No, freaking email us, man. I think it's like atheist-community.org's website. You can find our email there.
TV
at atheist-community. See, that's why the crew is here, is because without them, honestly, Jim and I would have no idea what to do.
I've said it enough.
Oh my gosh. But they are just furiously yelling at me in all caps behind the screen here. So I am going to read some of these wonderful super chats from the people who say nice things to us. Like, for instance, Miranda Rensberger, who gave us $5 and said 17 particles, 7 days. What is the obsession with trying to use random numbers to prove a deity? I agree. There's another side of that where it's just like they don't use a specific number. They just say the number's really big, God. And it's like, I don't think that works, man. I just don't. Like a Googleplex is a real number. It's a massive number. But like, I don't know that does anything for God. Anyway.
Yeah, and that was kind of our point to the caller was, okay, I'll grant you there's really one particle. Okay, fine. How does that get us to a God? And then he went off into trying to define God into something that would work and still be whatever God he believed in. Probably the Christian God, just by the odds of him being a caller from the U.S. So
and that's always where the
and also he was an Arizona caller, right? He was an Arizona caller?
I think so.
So either Mormon or Catholic would be the two big ones. So
yeah. But we also have $2 from Corvin Redacted saying, SR, I think you mean the argument from ignorance. That's highly possible. Argument from incredulity and the argument from ignorance, while they are similar, there are some important differences between the two. And I do sometimes mix them up. So highly possible. I will take that criticism in stride. But the moment the camera goes off, I'll probably cry. Anyway, $5 from Finnick Wolfox saying, free will. I got some premium quality artisan crafted organic non-GMO will for $39.99. Way better than that free stuff. Trust me. That sounds good. I feel like you would just want to sprinkle that over like a salad or I don't know. It just sounds delicious. Again, just honestly telling everybody that I skipped lunch today and that I am very much looking forward to dinner tonight. But not just yet, Jim. Not just yet, because we've got too many good callers. Like, for instance, we're going to go down to South Carolina and talk with Patrick, a theist, he, him pronouns, wants to ask about how to get out of a faith mindset. So you're talking with Jim and SR. What's up, Patrick?
Hey, I've been listening to the Atheist Experience for like a few months, and I have to say y'all are awesome.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I love it. But I want to try to. I'm not sure how to get out of a faith mindset, and I'm trying to figure out how, for example, y'all got out of that, or.
Yeah, Jim, do you want to go?
Yeah, you basically ask yourself, how do you know that? What makes that true? Over and over and over and over and over until you realize that, until you get to a point where you go, I don't care sometimes for some things. In philosophy, a proposition, you could take one of three stances to it. You can accept it as true, you can accept it as false, and you can say, I don't know. The entire Jim Barrows only fourth version of that is, I don't care. It is true that some I don't care. But that's basically what you do, is you ask yourself how you know that. And that's why you see a lot of atheists who are now what many people consider liberal were ones very conservative. That was me at one point. I was never anti-gay or anti-LGBTQ. I didn't think it was natural, but I wasn't against it either. Don't talk about cognitive dissonance. But and that's basically how I became more liberal than I am. It's like, how do I know that? This is why I believe that, and none of these things are true. And once you upset the apple cart and start examining every apple, you find the ones with the worms in them, you throw them away. It is not something that is done overnight. It's something that is done constantly, because they're constantly learning new things. A number of years ago, I was really into Renaissance swordplay, and I had come to a conclusion, and had been that way for several years. That conclusion was supported by many friends who said, yes, that's true, up until the one guy said, no, that's not true, and then proceeded to demonstrate on my head. And in almost literal fashion. I mean, he demonstrated it wasn't true by actual swordplay. So it's not something you ever stop doing, because we're always learning new stuff, and you never stop examining the old stuff. But that's all I've ever been able to do, is ask myself, how do I know that? Why do I think that's true?
Yeah, and my answer is going to be pretty similar, Patrick, because for the longest of times, while I definitely wouldn't have said I was a presuppositionalist. I definitely didn't hang out in those circles or pay attention to those arguments or anything. Like, my entire belief about God was smack dab in the middle of what I think people really mean when they say faith, which is, it's just gotta be the case, man. I just accept it, right? And somebody comes along and says, well, back that up, justify it. And my response was, no, there's no justification, because God has to be, man. God just has to be the case. It all is from God, or it just can't be. And then finally, one day somebody came along, and believe me, it did not sink in. Nothing changed the first time that I heard this. It took weeks and weeks of being of hearing this, of hearing, multiple people say no, yes, no, back and forth, a long time. But somebody came up one day and said, hey, man, couldn't you kind of just get to any conclusion with that? And I was like, I don't think so, man. It's gotta be God. No, okay, no, that won't work, because it has to be God. It just has to be. It couldn't be anything else. And then they were like, yeah, but couldn't that be the case with anything? Can't you get to any conclusion using that method? And if you know that conclusion can reliably get you to absolutely contradictory conclusions, that method regularly leads to contradictory conclusions. It doesn't sound like a really good method to use. And so then that led me to the point of saying, well, shit, how do we figure this stuff out then? What are methods for coming to understandings? And one of the coolest things that I found, and one of the things that I always love to say to my theist friends out there, is you're already doing it. You're already using the methods that are demonstrably more reliable. And in fact, you use them way more often than you use this faith method. You really do. And if you just try to focus on those reliable methods that you're already using, that you agree work to your satisfaction, not to mine, not to the radical skeptics. No, sir, to you, Patrick. You agree these methodologies work reliably, and you can demonstrate them to others. Just try to be as consistent as possible and use those methodologies in absolutely everything. Because at the end of the day, I think that's the way we're going to come to the most reliable conclusions. You know, it seems to work. Not saying it's always going to work, but so far, not bad, I guess. But we do have a couple of other calls, Patrick. But give us some thoughts real quick on that, and we'll wrap up with you and grab some of these others.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a very great answer.
Yeah,
I've heard a couple of that. So.
Yeah, and don't feel bad if like 3 weeks from now, right? Like, you know, you're carrying some super heavy object and, you know, it just slips out of your grasp and it just barely misses your toe, you know, and this thing would have like shattered your freaking foot. Don't feel bad if you just go like, oh my God, thank you, Jesus. The Lord and the angels are looking out for me. I have so much faith in you. Don't feel bad if that happens, because like, that's what we do as people. That's why we have for so long as a species talked about these bad methodologies that lead us to unreliable conclusions. That's why we have all these codifications of fallacies, is because they feel right. It makes it feels so correct for us to be like, well, it has to be that. It's like, well, yeah, that just feels really good, man. And it's like, wait, no, hold up now. I'm questioning this. I shouldn't do that. Oh, stupid SR. No, man. It's going to take time. It's not going to be something that you get off this call and you just go, all right, never going to use that again. But starting this journey, I think it is how you're going to get to the place where you start having much more reliable methodologies. And I think you're going to feel better about that, man. I really do. So, but yeah, thanks so much. Seriously, it was a really good call.
Yeah, thank you. I did have another question, but I'll probably I might have to call back for that.
Yeah. I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it, Patrick. But do call back. I won't be stingy with you. I will allow you to call into some of the other hosts. Just maybe not Johnny. He's, no, he's great. I'm just kidding. I love you, Johnny. But Patrick, seriously, thank you so much, brother. Do give us a call back in the future, and let's talk more about that. Let us know how the journey goes, man, because that's honestly, it's something that we don't always get to hear about, and could actually be extremely beneficial for a lot of our viewers and community members. So yeah, just let us know how this journey goes, man. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. I always love that. I always love talking with people who, kind of teetering on the edge, so to speak, I want even hardcore believers, Jim. Okay.
Especially hardcore believers.
Yep. I want you to have the most robust justification for your beliefs. I want you to have the absolute best freaking arguments, even if I think they still don't work. I think that makes us all better. I think that makes us all better, because it makes my arguments have to get better.
Right. And by best argument, you mean better than like the Kalam, the moral argument, the teleological argument.
Just anything Frank Turek says you can put on a low tier. that was probably.
Well, not only does Frank Turek have the best arguments, he's got the best evidence for his, or the worst evidence for his bad arguments. But I mean, these are the most common arguments that are out there, right? The cosmological arguments, the teleological arguments, the arguments for morality, the ontological arguments. We know what those are. They're all equally bad. They all equally fail. So yeah, good arguments. Yep. Preferably not ones that every apologist and everyone uses and have been, around since for the last 500 years at the very least.
Yeah, come on, let's get some new ones. Let's get some new theistic arguments. Tell me why I need to believe in a God based on an iPhone or something. I don't know. That just feels more That feels more right. Like TikTok would probably be. God's real because TikTok's real. I'm pretty sure yeah, that feels right to me. Anyway, we got a couple of other calls here. We're going to try to bust through these super duper quick. I think we probably can real quickly. So let's go to Olivia. She, her pronouns, is an atheist out in New Jersey and has a question about kind of why God was created. Hey, Olivia, you're chatting with SR and Jim. What is up?
Hi, guys.
Hey.
So, how you doing?
Good, pretty good. You know, having fun so far. Still not believing in a God, but you know, doing fine.
Right.
So,
Good day nonetheless, right?
that's right.
So, my question was about how, the concept of God was created. I think it was created by theists just as a way to like cope with the uncertainty of death and just what they couldn't explain about the universe. And then I don't really ever think that there was like a transition into our modern way of thinking. So it just kind of remained, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think I'm broadly on the same side. And I know this is pedantic. I know this is me being like focusing in on this one word or whatever. I think we should do our best to make sure that we're not presenting this as if the quote unquote the first believers, right, were doing it maliciously. Because it's one thing for somebody to sit right. So it's one thing for somebody to sit down and be like, I don't have a good answer to this, and this makes me feel bad, so I'm just gonna put this answer in the place, and that makes me feel better. You know, I think the way that we got to this is something super, super, super human, right? So, and I don't mean like superhuman, like, you know, Superman. I mean like very, very much what it means to be a human. It seems to be ingrained in us all, which is like, we have this thing that happens around us and we don't have a really good answer. And so we just kind of put an answer there. And over the years, over the millennia, right, these answers, all of the obviously bad, wrong things about it get shaved off, you know? And so at first we said, oh, well, our God is like a half bird, half man thing. And it like literally makes the birds fly. Like if you just looked under a bird's wing, you could see our God lifting up the wings. And then it's like, oh, I just looked under a bird's wing. It is not there. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah. So that's not really how our God is, right? So you shave down all of those really, really problematic things until you get to one concept that still does those things that you're talking about, but is at least a little bit more robust or less obviously flawed. But yeah, I want to be careful that we don't ascribe malicious intentions, because I think there are a shit ton, I would say probably even the majority of people out there that don't believe in a God strictly because they're like, oh man, I'm scared of death or something, you know? But again, broadly speaking, Olivia, I think I get where you're coming from, and I'd say that's probably a pretty good conclusion. More so than I don't know, some all-powerful who's he what's it, I don't know, poked a guy and told him to write some shit a while ago. So, but Jim, what do you think on all that? And we'll let Olivia go.
I think it's humans need to, we like stories. We like telling stories. I remember reading a long time ago that Odin and Thor, those stories have been traced down to the Black Sea, and to two warriors who may have existed. We don't know enough, but that very well could be a case, you know, of stories magnifying. But also, we know pareidolia exists. Our need to assign agency to random events. And I say need in quotes, but we do tend to do that a lot. So, and we see that in superstitions today, right? Baseball players who wear the same underwear every game so they win. And then that becomes, you know, that becomes sometimes self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because rituals help us focus and rituals help us set our mindset. So the ritual of putting on the same underwear every time goes to the player's mindset, which does help them, right? So it's not that it's the wearing the underwear, it's the ritual, right? I think all these things come into play. Like, Secular Rarity said, it's all of these human nature things coming together, and then nobody really asking the question, well, how do you know that? Right? Because we're social creatures, and asking questions is not sometimes socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your friend group kicks you out kind of quick around that time.
Right. Especially if they think their survival depends on you not asking that question.
Yeah.
Right.
And honestly, in human history, right, from our understanding that we currently have, there seems to be a point way back, 150,000 years, where asking those questions could have been a life or death thing. Like, you're standing around talking to your buddy and you're like, hey man, do you really think there's a God? And he's like, not really sure. And a fucking lion eats you. Like, yeah, maybe we just really didn't have the ability to ask that stuff,
Right. So I think your answer is overly simplistic, but not wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it makes me really grateful that we're in a place and time that we can ask these questions. We can have these conversations. It's a really, really special thing.
I agree.
Yes.
Totally agree. And I love that point, Olivia. So I am going to take that opportunity to kick you off the show, but not maliciously, because I think that is always a great topic. I think that's always a great conversation. And I think, where it feels to me where you're coming from is a really, really good place to just continue expanding your knowledge and get even more understanding of, how religions came to be to begin with. That's super duper fascinating. I find some of the oldest, the information that we have about some of the oldest belief systems out there is so freaking cool. And you get to start seeing this through line. And then you're like, oh shit, that's why they talk about that in the book of Job, or, oh my gosh, that's why it says that in the Vedas, So like, super duper cool. And again, I'll leave you the same place we left our last caller, which is just tell us what you find. Like, go look further into that, and then come back and just let us know, because that's always super interesting. So, but thank you so much, Olivia. We are gonna grab some of these other people real quick. We are gonna go out to Texas. We're gonna talk with Adam. Him is an atheist and is looking for hardcore peer-reviewed data to support evolution. Did I get that right, Adam?
Yes. Hello. I guess that was the most simplistic way I possibly could have put it.
Yeah.
Well, hello to you both.
Hi.
I'll be fairly honest with you guys that I've been watching this show for many years, and I don't really know you two individually that well. I'm kind of used to watching the episodes with like Tracy Harris and Matt Dillahunty and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Really old ones, yeah.
So if you'll excuse. If you guys will excuse my ignorance on who you guys are.
No worries, don't worry, man.
Since I finally get a chance to speak with you guys, yes, I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist for about 10 or so years. Even when I believed, I didn't really believe that strongly, and I finally decided to listen to some comedy against religion. It was a depressive phase, but I don't need to go there. But I finally decided to look at what was actually in the Bible, and I couldn't believe the shit that I found that was actually in there. And it just snapped. It really just snapped. I don't know what to tell anyone. It just snapped with me. But
yeah,
that's useless history. What I'm looking for right now is that when I think of religion and people believing a thing, what evidence do you have to support your claim? And the Bible is not evidence to support that claim. But when I think of scientific studies like evolution and climate change and stuff like that, I also don't know the actual scientific data that's being presented. Now, I'm not saying that I reject that science, but I'm just saying that I would love to know the science that's going into that's explaining it.
So obviously you want to look at, scientific books, scientific research and whatnot. And my problem is that anywhere that I go, whether it be online or a book, I find information that's giving me what scientists have summarized in findings, but not necessarily like the hardcore data.
You want the actual study. Okay. So
right.
please go ahead.
Yeah. So part of the problem you're going to run into is that evolution and biology are, for a layman, and if you're actually a biologist, turn your ears off, pretty much the same thing. For a layman, now don't go flaming me. I know there's differences. But, you can go to, like, when I give people the definition of evolution, which is the change in heritable traits of biological populations over successive generations, or any change of the frequency of alleles within a population from one generation to the next, I quote those back to an entry from stanford.edu on evolution, NCBI, NMI, the National Institute of Health.gov. I get a definition of alleles from genome.gov. And then so I can go and, give you kind of all of these different things that I use and have found. But they're all over the place because there's so many different topics under evolution, right? And we start with, and this is something that I do all the time, is I use any change in the frequency of alleles within a population from one generation to the next. And I say, now to disprove evolution, what you have to do is either prove that genes, and sometimes you have to define what an allele is, which is one of two or more versions of DNA sequences at a given genomic location. So basically, an allele controls the color of our eyes, the length of our arms, and like mine are blues. So I've got the genetic coding for blue, but the allele covers all the different colors of an eye could be. So that's, it's basically you either need to disprove the gene or prove the genes do not exist, or that their frequency doesn't change over time in a population. Because that's the simplest thing to do, and nobody can really do that, because as soon as they do that, they deny all kinds of things they otherwise accept as true. But again, I mean, I've gone and found these things just by Googling biological evolution. You got to put biology in front of evolution, and you can go find it there. I also got links to, for instance, the Journal of Evolutionary Biology, which is founded in 1988 and is still publishing as far as I know. And then there's the Evolution Internal Journal of Organic Evolution, which goes back to at least March of 1949, if not earlier, and I believe is still also active. And then you can find a bunch of other journals and other stuff. And then you can find evidence for evolution in things like somebody published a study on crows in Los Angeles that they thought that there was a speciation event that was going to happen between these two different populations of crows. And then they tracked it. Oh, it started to happen and then it didn't. And there's other weird places you can find it too. There's a study done between Russian sturgeon and I believe U.S. steelfish. Now, these two fish are separated by continents and millions of years of evolution, and they shouldn't be able to breed because they're different species, and yet they did. So that's also why it's in weird places, because they're studying populations and they're doing something where somebody will put a fishery will put two different fish together because they shouldn't be able to breed. Nothing bad should happen, and we need someplace to store these fish, and so put them in the same pond. And all of a sudden, you start getting a new breed. There's actually a new finch in the Galapagos that was published. That was published in Cosmos magazine. New species evolve in just 2 generations. So when I post my Prove Evolution notes I've got dozens and dozens and dozens of different places from dozens of different topics, because evolution covers every living thing, trees to whales to humans. We're all evolving, we're all changing. And so when you ask for one, there isn't. Because like I said, for us, for you and I talking right now, evolution and biology are kind of the same thing. So I would start with definitions and kind of go from there, and then just watch the science journals for interesting bits of science for all the different ways that evolution happens. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. And when I was, in the years that I've been trying to find, scientific data and whatnot, it's a bit like, it's a bit more like trying to find a doctor for a specific thing. Like there's hundreds of different kinds of studies of science and hundreds of different kinds of doctors. It's not just not just one summation. Like a brain surgeon can't really tell you that much about like your foot or something like that. It really is about narrowing down. It really is about narrowing down. And I guess my struggle has been really where to start with it. And I guess
so let me offer a couple of things, Adam, for that then, okay? Because I'm definitely not a scientist. I can go ahead and just tell you this straight up. Really, you should not be coming to me for biology or evolution stuff, but that's okay, because what I think is super valuable is being able to say to people, hey, here's actually some really good places to start your journey, right? Not to end, not to get all the freaking answers, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give 2 websites. Okay. I'm going to give 2 straight up been doing this their whole freaking lives. These guys are, top of the top elite scientists in this field. And I'm going to give you 2 people who are also incredible scientists and very, very intelligent. But they are wonderful content creators on YouTube and are very easily accessible. They do a really great job of compiling information. So the websites, and you don't have to worry about writing this down because it'll be up there on the YouTubes. You just rewind it and just get all the info. But NCBI, right, is just a great place for the actual articles, as well as Google Scholar, right? A lot of your articles are going to be behind a paywall, though, potentially, right? So you may have to get a membership. But a lot of times I have discovered, if you find a published paper that you're really, really interested in, and it has a paywall, if you contact actually one of the authors of that paper, they'll send it to you. So that's at least a start. I'm going to offer these scientists, and the scientists that I'm going to offer are Kenneth Miller is just a really cool dude that has a lot out there. And I'm going to offer Francis Collins. And I specifically picked those 2 people because they are, by their own admission, hardcore, very much believing Christians, because I think it's really important to show that, accepting evolution doesn't necessarily, get rid of God. I would rather people be God believers and accept evolution and the age of the earth than be young earth creationists or not accept evolution and not be God believers. That's just my personal stance. And then the final 2 people I'm going to mention, you probably know these names because they are absolutely phenomenal. Seriously, these 2, I go to these 2 for so much information and I am never disappointed. But the wonderful Forrest Valkai, gets to hang out with us here a lot over at the ACA. And then Erica Gutsick Gibbon. I just genuinely love her content. I think she does an absolutely phenomenal job of compiling and presenting information. And at does Forrest too. Like, I'm not, both of them. I think all of these things that I have just mentioned are phenomenal. And if anybody in the live chats or comments wants to disagree with me, I will not read your comment because I think you're wrong. So, yeah, those people, those places, that is going to be a really, really good start. Again, Adam, not the end result, but a start for sure. But before we let you go, Jim, was there anything else you wanted to add on?
No, chat was actually reminding me that the Selfish Gene is a good place to get started.
Yeah, Dawkins.
By Dawkins. Yeah. Dawkins is an evolutionary biologist, so he'd be a good place to start and fairly accessible. I had forgotten about him. But yeah, I would go with Gutsit Gibbon in particular. She's an anthropologist,
Primatologist.
Primatologist.
I think
Thank
she
you.
like just got her PhD in it, did some field
Yes.
work and stuff. She's awesome, seriously.
Yeah, she
Go
really
check out her
is.
stuff. I'm just a big fan of her stuff.
Yeah, and Forrest is biology of some sort, but he also does more generic content, science content, and his science is also top notch on that.
Yeah.
But he's also biology. If you just want to up your biology game a little bit, then you can look at Crash Course in Biology here on YouTube, put out by PBS. And I really like the crash courses in almost everything they've done, because they do a really good job of giving you good bite-sized chunks. They're not trying to be get you, college credit or high school credit. They're just trying to give you enough that you understand the material. So the crash course there in biology, or crash course in evolution, would be good places to get started too.
Yeah. And again, Adam, watch all this stuff back, later on today or tomorrow or whatever, and you'll have it all compiled right here. Hopefully that was something, again, for a start. And also don't forget, like, there's the atheist community of Discord, created by fans, run by fans. We got the fan run Facebook pages and all that stuff. We got a bunch of people that aren't on shows, don't do crew or anything. They're just good people that love the community, love to hang out, and they're incredibly knowledgeable. Like, you'd be surprised how many of the people hanging out in our live chat right now have various degrees, that could be worthwhile in terms of just as a sounding board, just bouncing ideas off of them and saying, hey, is this a good place to go and whatnot. But yeah, Adam, hopefully that was a good start. At the very least, thanks so much for hanging out with us and giving us a call. And we're glad that we're glad that you're interested in it, and you're wanting to dive deeper into that, so you can have more purposeful and worthwhile conversations with believers. So thank you so much, Adam. And we're not done yet, folks, because we're actually going right out. It's amazing how we're doing this. We're going all the way from Texas, all the way to Michigan to say hey to Denny, an atheist with he, him pronouns. It sounds like you are wanting to know about kind of how to come out to your family, kind of break the news, so to speak, about not believing. Is that right, Denny?
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, give us a quick like 30 seconds if you can. Yeah.
What was that?
Just lay out the situation for us in like 30 seconds to a minute if you can, just so we have a little bit more understanding.
Yeah. So how do I begin? A while back, me and another guy were at a church function, and we were talking, and we sort of we snuck down to the church basement and started we caught feelings for one another and started kissing and stuff. And maybe a week after that, there was a sermon that the pastor did, and the other guy felt guilty and told the pastor what had happened. And so for the past 6 or 7 months now, or maybe 8 months, because it's February, we've been working with the pastor, basically to make us more straight.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, torture.
Yeah.
You can say what it is. It's torture. Conversion therapy is torture. Is psychologically torturing people. So.
Yeah, it's been really depressing and confusing. But so anyway, my folks know about this, and so I've been watching AXP and debating with people in the comments section and all this other things, and I've come to a point where I can't honestly believe in God anymore, and I've become a new atheist. And so I kind of want to tell my family about this, but I'm a little nervous because it's at the same time it's the same as admitting that this the stuff that we've been doing with the pastor hasn't worked. And
so let me ask you real quick,
so,
if you don't mind, a minor personal question. How old are you?
21.
Okay. That changes the way we answer quite a bit. Sure. Means we can answer a little bit. What's your goal? What do you want at the end of you telling your parents this? What's the goal?
Great question.
Well, I guess I want to live more honestly, you know, and I want to be ideally accepted by my family, and I guess I you know, because there's a lot of fears that they're gonna reject me or you know, like disown me. So
right.
You know, my mom's sort of better with it than my dad is, but
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I don't understand what people mean they can live more honestly, because my situation is somewhat similar to yours, except I have no desire nor need to come out to my parents, because I personally, with my relationship with my parents, and you take everything I say for what it is. It's just me and my parents, and I'm talking about me and my parents, right? It has no bearing on you except as one person's relationship. But I'm not out to them because I can't think of a way that I can come out as an atheist to them that won't hurt them and will not kill our relationship. And to me, it's not worth it. Do I go to mass with them? No. Do I talk about politics with them? No. Do I talk about religion with them? Absolutely not. But I don't live any less honestly than I do with anybody else, right? I'm not that different. I'm an atheist activist on this show and the shows that I do. I'm very fortunate. They don't watch YouTube. Now, that doesn't mean I've got cousins who watch YouTube. That doesn't mean that my cousins haven't sent them a clip or two. But they've never brought it up, and I've never brought it up. And I don't, because I don't want to hurt them, and I'm not a good enough conversationalist to avoid that. I see no reason to bring it up. They may be in the same boat on their side. I don't know, right? If someone sent them clips. So I don't know how I'm living less honestly and saying I love my parents and don't want to hurt them, and I know that this would hurt them, therefore I'm not going to do that. But like I said, that's just my relationship with them. That's not your relationship with your family. You may be closer or more estranged or whatever, but that's just one way that to handle it. Now, as for the pastor, if it was me, I'd tell him to fuck off and die. I'd never talk to him again. But that's just me.
Yep. I want to just real quick, Denny, just say, yeah, first off, I love what Jim said, because I think oftentimes there's so many people in this in this type of conversation where it's like, yeah, you need to come out, you need to say this, you need to live honestly, and I just don't think that's always the case for sure. I think one of the biggest things that needs to be weighed is your safety, right? Your security, and not just, physical, emotional, and mental, as well as financial, right? If you're at risk of being, kicked out of the house, and, you don't have anything to support you, you don't have any friends and family, that absolutely is going to weigh on the decision. I'll just say, absolutely one of the best freaking things to do is reach out to a place like Recovering from Religion, which is not just for non-believers. It is for people of all faiths and none, to call and speak with somebody who is trained and knowledgeable, and can, be a really, really great sounding board for you to throw out ideas and stuff. And then again, of course, we've got all the fan run pages here, the Facebook groups, the Discord, and there's a bunch of people that bunch of different views, bunch of different ideas and methods. And hey, I did this with my brother 12 years ago, and this is how it happened. But then this is the conversation I had with my mom last week, and oh my gosh, it was so much better. So those places, absolutely. Recovering from Religion, Secular Therapy Project, all the fan run pages here at the ACA. Those are wonderful, wonderful resources. And then I'll just end with,
is that
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, is that recovering from religion like .org or .com?
Yes. Yes. And if you go back and you look, if you see the live chat now, I'm sure our wonderful mods are having stuff like that in the live chat, or again, any of our descriptions, our fan run pages. We are, so many of us here are such fans of those places. And we'll just constantly provide those links because they are wonderful organizations. So yeah, those places for sure. And I'll just end with, a note that I heard somebody mention it, a while ago, and this wasn't exactly the way that I first started telling, close people in my life, where I sit on this kind of spectrum. But I heard somebody mention the idea of, don't build it up to be this massive fucking thing. Don't spend weeks and weeks and weeks coming up with the exact right description. If I say this word instead of this word, or if I do it at dinner as opposed to breakfast, it's normal. Brother, it's normal to not believe. It's normal to be an atheist. It's normal to have questions and to doubt and to not be a straight up cookie cutter carbon copy of the person next to you. It's absolutely normal. And it is so okay that you don't believe the same thing as everybody else. And so present it as such, just the same as if somebody were to ask you, hey, Denny, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? I love Rocky Road. I think Rocky Road ice cream is the best fucking ice cream out there. And with no hesitation, with no problem whatsoever, you respond and say, like, you know what, SR, it's not my favorite, actually. I really like this kind of ice cream. And absolutely everything about the world is fine because it is 100% normal, brother. It is absolutely okay that you don't believe. That was just a cool point that I had heard from somebody on this wonderful show years ago, and I really like it. And when I'm talking to new people who don't know, I try to just present it casually. They say something about Jesus loves me or something, and I just say, oh, I'm not a Christian. And more often than not, it has seemed to work out for me. But whatever you end up doing and whatever ends up happening, one, know that there are all these wonderful communities here that are going to be here to support and show some love. So definitely let us know, no matter what. And then know that whatever happens here, however you go about this and whatever consequences may come, good, bad, and different, this experience could be incredibly valuable for other people. So just come let us know. Give us a call back in the future, hang out in the pages, get some advice, and see what works best for you, brother. Jim, did you have anything else before?
To do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, I'd just like to add something to your ice cream analogy. Yeah. If you put cilantro in that ice cream, I will taste nothing but soap.
Yeah.
And I love all ice cream, but you put a little bit of cilantro in there, that's just the way my genetics are.
Right.
And so sometimes what you like, what you don't like is done by your genetics. And if your pastor doesn't get that, as I said before, tell him from me. Tell him I said he can fuck off and die. You tell him whatever you want. But if you tell him I said that, he's probably not going to like you too much. But that might be the bonus plan.
Yeah.
But you are who you are, and that is perfectly fine.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you like cilantro, I don't. Who cares?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys talking to me, and I left a super chat not long ago. I think it was SR and Armin about being nervous, and he had advised to mention that I was nervous before I did, but I didn't even have to do that. You guys are so gentle, and I really appreciate you guys talking to me.
Well, thank you, Denny.
Excellent.
And I will say, just because you mentioned, I'll mention it too, that that super cool dude, Armin Navabi, is actually hanging out backstage right now as our backup in case any major problems happened. We were lucky enough that it didn't, but myself, Jim, and Armin will all be hanging out for a little bit in the Discord after show. So if you can, Denny, come and chat with us there and say all that. He's grinning real hard right now. He's starting to blush a little. He's getting embarrassed. He's like, "Shut up, SR, you fucking idiot." Anyway, thanks so much, Denny. We really appreciate you calling, man. And like I said, seriously, there's a bunch of places, bunch of support. Go back and watch this to get all those names and lists and whatnot. But yeah, let us know how this all turns out, and just know that you are normal. It is absolutely okay who you fucking are, Denny. You don't have to apologize for that. You don't have to justify that shit. And yeah, I'm kind of with Jim. You can tell that pastor that's torturing you to go fuck himself. So, but thanks so much, Denny. We really do appreciate you. And yeah, I think that's a good call to get ready to wrap up on. But folks, we can't leave just yet because I have to remind you about the awesome prompt for this week. What is an example of God's sense of humor? Get your answer in the comments below the video. Do not put it in the live chat. If you put it in the fucking live chat, it's not going to count, and you won't be read on next week's episode. So if your comments are good enough, we will read them. But Jim, this was great, man. I thought this was a really good show. Yeah. We had a good time, and a lot of really good calls, I thought. And still an atheist? You still don't believe in God, or?
Yeah, nobody came even close.
Okay, well, next time, because we'll do this again. Yeah, we're gonna do this again. Funny enough, just like 7 days from now, around the same time, like 4:30 p.m. Central Time on Sundays. So we've been doing it for like, I don't know what, 26, 27, 28 years, and still haven't gotten there, but I'm sure one of these days it will happen. But until then, everybody, thank you so freaking much for joining us, whether you're live or you're watching it on the replay. We really, really do appreciate you. Go ahead and like, subscribe, comment. I mean, do all that stuff. It is so super meaningful, and it gets it out there to let other people know that they aren't alone, but they don't have to subject themselves to garbage and torture, and that there are some good answers and there are some good people out there. So yeah, come hang with us next Sunday, I guess. But until then, get out, do some blasphemous things, go be a sinner or whatever, and we'll see you next time. What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.